Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Podcast with your host, Jeff Lopes. Jeff has over 2 decades experience as a serial entrepreneur, building brands like Kimura from his home basement to a multi-million-dollar global brand that has sold over 250,000 pairs of boxing gloves. Jeff's here to educate, guide, and drive you on the process of bringing your ideas and dreams to reality with the inspiring stories from some of the top business minds.
Welcome to episode number 104 of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today John Stankiewicz. John is a podcast host and author and the founder of the Hustle Prevails apparel line. Great conversation with this young entrepreneur. Great little story. Sit back, everyone, and enjoy. We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today John Stankiewicz. Did I get that right?
Yeah, man, you got it. How are you doing today, Jeff?
I'm doing amazing. So I met John a few months back. We've connected. And actually, when I did meet John, he was in, where were you again?
I was in Colombia.
I know, the little hot spot. You were there for how long?
So I spent about a month there that time, going back in a month for 3 more. But yeah, we connected. We had the terrible Wi-Fi. It was like terrible circumstances right there.
So John is a young entrepreneur. He's doing incredible things. He's an author, podcast host. He's working in the sales space. There's tons of things we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to do it a little different. I want to dive into, usually I start off by talking about what you're currently doing, what you're currently up to. Let's dive back and let's talk about John growing up. Where'd you grow up and tell me yourself as a kid, how were you?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. I grew up in a very rural town in Connecticut called Goshen. And put it in perspective, my high school graduating class, it was 97 students from 3 combined towns.
Oh, wow.
So we were basically outpopulated by the chickens and the goats and the cows here. But grew up in this really small town. And I was always kind of just like a troublemaker in a way. And the fact that I just went against the system, always went against the rules, was always just kind of rebellious, I guess. And always landed me in trouble in school. It was always harmless things, just mostly me thinking I was a lot funnier than authoritative figures thought I was, but ended up in a lot of, lunch detentions and stuff like that. But what really changed my life is when I was 14 years old, I got a call down to the principal's office and sat down. There was the principal, the vice principal, superintendent. And I remember getting the call over the intercom and like everyone in class turns around, looks at you. And it was like something I was just used to, but this time I felt a little weird about it. And so I go into the office, they're all sitting there and they're like, John, do you know why we called you down today? And a million reasons ran through my head, but I'm like, no, like what's going on? And they were like, well, earlier today, a student made a bomb threat and we found out who it was. We brought him in here. We sat him down and had him admit everything he had done wrong while he was here in school. And it came up that 2.5 months earlier, you sold him a $5 bag of weed in history class. And immediately I was like butterflies in my stomach, face turned red. And because I remember the moment, and what had happened was this kid asked me if I could get him weed. And I wasn't selling drugs or a drug dealer, but I knew where to get it. I got it for him. Apparently, of all places, I decided history class was the place to sell it to him. And here we were in this situation. And the superintendent was like, John, if you just come clean and admit it, we'll work to correct things. Everything will be way easier to deal with. And being 14 years old, scared out of my mind, I didn't know what to do other than trust them. So I admit to doing it, and it results in me getting expelled from high school for half the year. I had to do 200 hours of community service before I could return. I had to do all of my tutoring hours outside of the school. And bro, I thought my life was over. I was sitting there thinking that the best I'd ever be able to amount to is probably a fry cook at McDonald's or working as a cashier somewhere, because of how we're taught how important school is in our life and how important being well-behaved and following the rules and all of that stuff is. So that led into, a few weeks of me really kind of slipping into a dark place. And after 2 weeks of really moping around my house, my parents sat me down and they were like, John, we don't condone of what you did. What you did was wrong, but you need to understand you're only 14 years old. You have so much life ahead of you, and you can either allow this to make you or break you. And I made the decision in that moment that I'd figure out a way to become successful by any means necessary. and, went through, we can go into whatever depth you want going from there. But that was really the pivotal moment for me when I decided that I was going to figure out how to become successful. At first, it started with like that chip on your shoulder type thing of wanting to prove people wrong. Now, obviously, it advances way past that as you go through the journey. But that's really where things started, man. And it's interesting because I love talking with people. I always find that adversity typically creates the best situations for people to succeed out of if you're able to reframe them properly.
That is, there's two things I'm going to go there with. One, I love what you said there with adversity, because I do believe the difference from some of the most successful people or the most talented athletes or anybody in their field that succeed is most of them have some form of adversity they've somehow gone through, and that adversity, they reframed it, like you said, and turned it into almost gasoline or gas to push them forward and push them through. So I love that when you said that. When that did happen, and this is going to go right into, I guess, your whole branding with Beyond the Classroom, all that stuff like that. When did you get back into school? What was your mindset? At that age, you're very young. You're in grade 9 still. And I love how your parents wheeled you in and obviously turned it into a lesson of reality is life. Everybody goes through ups and downs. Everybody makes mistakes, right? Where did it take you from there on? What was the next step with you?
Yeah. So obviously that half year, so I got expelled. It was I think it was in January of my freshman year. So that whole second half of the year was done. And so basically I had to just focus on my tutoring. And like I said, it was all outside of the school. So I was meeting up with tutors and libraries, and I got my grades to perfect levels. Pretty much every morning I was doing 4 hours at my local church, painting, stuffing envelopes. I was making like everything I could do to get these community service hours done. And one of the biggest obstacles to overcome, and most of my really good friends, their families were understanding of the situation. If that had happened today, it would be like people would be laughing. A $5 bag of weed, like, because of how far we've come. But there's also families that didn't accept me or want their kids hanging around me. The girl I was talking to, her family completely forced her to stop talking to me. And those things were difficult to overcome. But like I said, I feel like when you make that decision, you made your mind up, nothing is going to stop you or take you off that path. And that's basically what I did. And I got back into school. The first day, I remember my best friend was the star athlete in like our entire district. And he's like 6'5", this monster in 10th grade somehow. And we made this shirt that said Stankiewicz security. And he's like walking me around the hallways on the first day back, just because I can't help myself, man. But, but I got back, I got my grades up. I was working like 30 hours a week in a local kitchen because my family, they did well, but I remember they said, if you want a car to drive, you need to go get a job. So I was working as a fry cook, like doing whatever I could, getting my grades up. And I actually got into the college of my dreams by the time I graduated, and I was going to pursue this path of physical therapy. And about a month before I was supposed to go, I had to have another difficult conversation with my parents because we couldn't afford it. They didn't have the money. I didn't apply for scholarships. I definitely didn't have that type of money to pay. It's like $40,000 for out-of-state tuition. So my mom was like, the best we can do is send you to the local community college. And I had already gone to this school, signed up for classes, met all the people I was going there with. So I had to take a step back. And again, like 2 weeks, I was miserable because I was so ready to get out of my hometown and go start this path to success. And now I have to stay home for a year and commute to a community college. And it was like 2 weeks I threw a hissy fit for. But then again, you're forced to make the decision. You're like, all right, this is what it is. You can play the victim, or you can rise up and let the situation find the best within it. And I made the decision. I wouldn't let finances dictate the decisions I'd make the rest of my life from that point forward. And I thought it was going to be the physical therapy route I was pursuing. But I got through that year, great grades, transferred into the University of Connecticut, the main campus, which is the big school in our state. And that's when I was introduced to entrepreneurship. And then at that moment is when school kind of, I wouldn't say went out the window, because I did finish college. I did get my degree and I did fine in school, but I knew that would never be my path once I was introduced to entrepreneurship.
Okay, so let's dive into that quickly. There's two things. I want to go back quickly on one thing there. Do you find that you've always had and this is not a bad thing, I think this is a positive thing, and I'll explain to you why I'm asking this after. Have you always thought you've always had a little chip on your shoulder?
Definitely from that expulsion moment, 100%. I think it's evolved in recent times, because in the beginning it was always like, let's prove everyone wrong. Let's show everyone I have what it takes. Let's show them they were wrong about me. But then once you get to a certain point, it really flipped into impact mode for me and took the view off myself.
See, I when I look at chip on his shoulder, and some people think it's arrogance, I think that's belief, self-belief.
Mm.
And I think the people that turn around and say somebody's arrogant about it, you could take it the wrong way, but somebody that you look at somebody saying they're arrogant because they believe in themselves, those are the people that usually don't believe in themselves that are trying to bring you down with them.
Mm.
And I think it's very impactful that when you see a young entrepreneur have a little chip on the shoulder, because that is what changes. That's what makes the best athletes. That's what makes the best entrepreneurs, is having that little ego where when people say no, 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 you just keep going, going, going. And it's very easy, if you don't have that little chip on the shoulder or that confidence or that belief, self-belief in yourself, to take all those no's, and that starts bringing you down. And then you have that self-belief that you can't do it. And it's funny because I was talking about this the other day. There's a Major League Baseball player that my son plays baseball, and my son absolutely adores. His name is Marcus Stroman. He used to play for the Blue Jays. Now he's a pitcher for the New York Mets. And when you're in a Major League Baseball player, are you a baseball fan at all?
I used to be heavy into it, and not as much anymore, but I was.
So, but Major League Baseball players, pitchers are usually high stature. They're always 6'2", 6'3". These are pitching down the mound. They're all big frames, big boys. Marcus Stroman is like 5'4". Never, ever would this guy make the majors as a pitcher. Every path he hit, everybody was like, "You're not big enough to be a pitcher in the major. You're not big enough to pitch in the major." And he made the majors. He's one of the top pitchers in Major League Baseball. And what's funny is he actually has a tattoo of a chip on his shoulder. Actually, like a poker chip. And it's funny that it's one of those things where I do believe that self-belief in yourself is so powerful. And it's, like I said, a lot of people might look at it as arrogant, and it's something where I've always had a chip on my shoulder. I always think I could, no matter what, it's going to get done. I always had that self-belief. And I think it's such a powerful thing. And I think that's something you're born with. And sometimes it takes certain moments in your life to bring it out of you, but I think it's something you're born with. So I love that you recognize that, and you actually, from a young age, use that to kind of push towards what you were trying to do. So in college, what was the moment? So you said there was a moment that introduced you to entrepreneurship. What was that moment?
Yeah. So my first year away, and I think everything you said was perfect. It's all about, it's how you use it really that I think matters most. It's about if you're going to be destructive with it or constructive, you know what I mean? 100%. So I agree 100% with what you're saying. So I love that. Yeah. So I went away to college. I was pursuing this physical therapy route. And one day in my dorm, I get a call from my best friend that I grew up with, and same guy I was working 30 hours a week with behind the fry later in the grill at the local restaurant that we worked at. Just tons of great memories with him. And he starts to tell me about this business opportunity he found in the network marketing space. He's like, "Dude, we got to get on a video call right now." And I'm like, "Why are we getting on a Skype? Like, what is that? Why would we do that?" And so we get on this video call. He proceeds to break down to me the industry of network marketing. And what happened for me, so a lot of people get introduced, they're super skeptical. They're like, "It's too good to be true." Whatever. For me, it was like that light bulb went off, and I saw like all these younger people he was showing me traveling the world, being their own boss. He's introducing me to the concept of residual income and leverage. And like one of my favorite things is the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, just that switch, the cash flow quadrants.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this path exists. And I'm like, I never was taught about this in any single one of my classes or anywhere in life. And so for me, I was like, let's do this damn thing. And I partnered with him right away. It was like, I think about $600 I needed for my first initial pack. And my grandparents would give me $500 every Christmas to get my textbooks for school. So I took that money and just signed up for this business opportunity. And we just hit the ground running. We had people coming to our dorm room every single night to show them the opportunity, the vision. Basically, like that's where our focus was, on what was possible, this lifestyle. And it got to the point where growing to other college campuses with our business. And I didn't have a car at the time, so I was borrowing this girl who lived on my hallway's car to go on the weekends and do these events. And we'd be in like courtyards, we'd be just infiltrating classrooms, like wherever we could get a space and get people congregated, we'd present the opportunity, and left no stone unturned. And after about 6 months with that business, we had made money, we had built a solid team, but I'd realized that my integrity just really didn't align with the company we were part of. On a certain call, I had one of my friends get on to show them the opportunity. And one of my upline leaders straight up was lying about their income and what they achieved. And I just couldn't get behind that. But what was really interesting is that my mom was actually involved in network marketing already with a different company. And she had shown it to me about a year before, but I just wasn't open to it. I was 18. I'm like, how does this align with me, Mom? Like, I don't know what you're trying to do here. Like, go do your thing. But just can't see how this could be for me. But in the meantime, I was learning network marketing. I was learning the industry. I was learning what made a good company. And I was watching her. And a year and a half into her journey, when she had never even gone to college, she was set to make a 6-figure income and was building a team of thousands of people. The product was actually impacting their lives. People were making real money. So I decided, it was very difficult, but I decided to switch over and partner with her. And that was, I thought it was just going to be like, everyone's going to follow me. Everyone's going to come with me. Like, it's going to be smooth sailing. 0 people came over with me. And I was in a fraternity in school. I remember like walking in after I made the decision to leave that first company, because I was so loud about it. Like, I was out there every day. Like, this is going to be it. This is going to be the opportunity that changes my life. And I'd walk into our chapter meetings and people would be like, hey, Bernie Madoff, how's your house of cards doing now? Like, just comments like that. And it really didn't at first, because you get a lot of scrutiny and a lot of resistance when you try something new. And it didn't bother me, but it started to bother me after I changed that course and decided to partner with my mom. So it took me a while to get back in the full swing of it. But that entrepreneur was never unlocked. Like, we spent all of college building businesses out of our dorm room. We had one, we were flipping textbooks during finals week, and I would be standing outside lecture halls offering people to buy their books in cash as they left their final exam. And we'd make anywhere from 15 to 20K in a week between our team of 5 of us, just from this all out grind. And we had another business busing students to and from off-campus parties and events. We tried stock trading. We were flipping jerseys online, sports jerseys, and probably a lot of other things I probably should mention on the podcast. But, you know, all of these entrepreneurial endeavors. But what was crazy is by the time I graduated, I had earned my degree in applied mathematics and economics. And my business with my mom was to a point where I was making residually more than what most of my friends were making, going to what I like to call the cube farm for the 40-40-40 plan. And I decided, I was like, I don't want to go that path. And that's when things really took off. I moved to Italy after college, spent 7 months there, traveling all around Europe, getting a paycheck every single Monday from my online business. And things just escalated and escalated. And I don't know what depth you want to go into. I feel like you could just keep going and going off on a tangent, but
I mean, there's one word to describe everything you're saying there with all those businesses you're trying or different ventures you're trying. It's hustle. And I think as a young entrepreneur, I mean, me in my 20s, I went through a 19 to 20, 25, 26, about 5-6 year gap where I opened and sold, exited 2 gyms. I had a consulting business. I had a sports events business. I used to do charity events, another business. That's where I have all the photos with celebrities. I used to do all the galas and dinners, running private and live auctions. What other business did I do? We had a novelty t-shirt company. Like, it was one of those things where it's just, I love building, and then I would just exit it. I'll build it to enough where I would just almost start feeling bored of it. And when I got bored of something, I would exit. I would find a way to exit out of it. And I would always try to profit a little bit, but exit from it. And Camor in 2006 was the first company that really stuck with me. And 15 years later, we still have it. And obviously we built other companies since then, but it was always a situation of finding something and then just getting bored of it and wanting to try something new, that's the hustle. I think that's what makes the best entrepreneurs is that constant drive just to always feel like you got to keep doing something new. And it also could be a negative thing, right? Sometimes you don't give something enough time to breathe or grow. So when you did this business with your mom, I mean, I was, to be honest, you're the first entrepreneur I've had that had a business with your mom. So how did the dynamic do? Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I have 4.
How was their mindset? How was their relationship in the business?
My sibling situation is all over the place. We need like a whole map drawn out behind me to describe it fully. But I was my younger brother and sister at the time when I started, so I was 18. They were probably 9 and 11.
So they're babies still.
And then my older siblings one's turning 40, one's in her mid 30s. So like, I was very unique position, and I think differently than they do. My younger sister kind of uses our products and builds with us to a certain extent, but she's really the only one that even has interest. She's only 18 right now too. So, but it was interesting. And I think that's why when she showed me the opportunity at first, I was just like, Mom, how are we going to do this together? She was doing it with a business partner from a previous company she was partnered with, where they did all these home parties, selling all these spices and desserts. And so that's just the mentality I had about what they were doing right off the bat. I'm like, I'm 18. Like, what does this have to do with me? So at first I didn't see it. Then I learned the industry. And even though my mom was kind of upset, I decided to partner with a different company. she started plugging me into the trainings and giving me the books and the podcasts and everything I needed to actually learn the mentality I needed, learn the industry, learn the skill set. So it perfectly primed me. She had the long-term vision. In hindsight. She knew exactly what she was doing, because she knew the company I was with probably wouldn't stick around for the long run, which it didn't. Yeah. But she just plugged me into all the right resources. And when the timing was right, I switched over. And then from there, it was really a matter of me going through, because that first experience left me with a lot of very bad beliefs around the industry. Yeah. And it took me a while to really reframe them. So that whole Italy experience happened. When I came home, that's when I really marked my beginning of going all in on that business and treating it like a business. Because up until then, I was just treating it like a side hustle. Like I was
how many years ago was that?
That what?
When you got back from Italy.
So I was there in 2016.
So you're looking at 5 years.
Yeah. So I've technically been involved for 9. And the past few years, though, has definitely been the time that I've focused on it and really started building it. So I came back from Italy. I was like, let's start treating like a business. And that's when I started taking social media a lot seriously, went through some serious personal growth, really, really, really committed to using our products for physical transformation, and committed to our team as well for a few different challenges that were presented within our company and the business. So these 3 things I committed to were, first of all, becoming a top 10 income earner for ages 25 and under in the company. I remember going to an event and seeing him walk across the stage. I was like, I'm going to be up there next year. We have a 16-week physical transformation challenge. And I was like, I'm going to get in the best shape of my life using our products. And then the company had just launched this incentive trip for a free cruise in the Caribbean. And the top 25 teams based on performance would end up going on this trip for free. And so I committed to that with my mom, her best friend, a few team members, that 16-week transformation challenge. And as a result, I figured that by taking that seriously, I'd build my business and get into the top 10 earners. So that was when I really made that switch and went on to be a top 10 earner for 25 and under for 3 years in a row, got into the best shape of my life. We earned that cruise challenge. And that's what's escalated into all these like new business ventures, that the freedom, time freedom, and financial freedom that business has allowed me. But, you know, I think with my mom, what's cool is she's always supported my craziness and my adventures. And she's always allowed me to go explore myself and find myself. So she allowed me and gave me the space. Like, she never was overbearing or over pressuring when I was doing other things instead of focused fully on this, because she knew eventually that I'd come around. And when I did, I was just ready to go. And I mean, even today, even though my focus isn't entirely there on that business right now, still, we work together every single day. I talk to her every day. We're always strategizing. We wrote our books together. Like, at the same time, we were like basically accountability partners during that. And so our relationship has been huge in terms of how I've developed as an entrepreneur.
I love that. I love that. And there's a few things I want to talk about there. And I love that I'm going to call you a mama's boy. I'm a mama's boy. I'm 44, John. And I still call my mom every morning on my way to the office. I call my mom every night before I go to bed. I think it's a very special relationship. And I think it's, I was just talking about this earlier today. And I don't know if it's something we talked about when I was on your podcast or not, but is the last few years, I've really taken into account how time is essentially a currency. And it's only been a few years that I've really, really focused on it. I've always been family first, and I've always really put a lot of time into my family. But I'm realizing now that my parents are in their 70s, and I'm looking at them. And 2 years ago, if my dad were to be like, "Hey, Jeff, I need something," I'd be on a Tuesday. I'd be like, "No problem, Dad. I'll come see you on Saturday. I'll drive down and help you fix that." Now, if my dad calls me on a Tuesday, says, "Jeff, I need something," guess what? I'm down there. 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, I'm in the car on the way down there, because I don't want to live with regrets. I don't want to get that phone call and say something happened to one of my loved ones, or something happened to somebody I cared about, and I didn't pick up that phone, or I didn't make that drive. So I live with zero regrets. Zero regrets. So I value time. And I think all that time that you're spending with your mom is I think is more important to your mom, just the time you guys are spending, than it is the actual business. And I think she's almost being, in a way, selfish, but in a positive way, because it's allowing you guys to spend so much time together. And it's going to be so important, because you're going to look back. You're so young right now. You're 20. How old are you? 20?
27. 27.
You're going to look back in your 40s, and you're going to be married with kids. And these moments with your mom and stuff are going to be such a precious time in your life. And
totally.
And it's so remarkable. And you're so lucky you're able to do that. So appreciate that. And I appreciate that. And within general, your business now. Okay, let's talk. There's so many areas I want to go with this. Let's talk about the book. when did you start take pen to paper and actually dive into, I'm going to write a book and my mom's going to write one. Let's talk about her book as well. So when did you guys start this journey?
Yeah. So she's been talking about her book since I was, from what I remember, like early high school. Like she's had this idea for a long time. And for me, it was when I was graduating college, literally graduation day, looking down at my cap and gown on my bed, just thinking to myself, like, dude, every single important lesson I've learned to become successful has come from outside of school. As I'm getting ready to go grab that 6-figure piece of paper, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, and at first it was kind of like a negative look at it, but then I reframed it. And I'm like, well, I realized that the school system, it was just everything I did, like all these businesses we were running, the networking I was able to do there, just nothing came from the formal education piece. And I had this title right off the bat, Beyond the Classroom. And I was like, maybe a book would be cool. And in the beginning, I just got the opinions from the wrong people. I talked myself out of it. You think about writing a book and it's such a daunting task because you start writing the chapter 1 or introduction and you're like, and you see how long that takes. And you're like, wait a minute, I'm going to commit to this for a full book. How long is this going to take? What if it fails? What if it sucks? So there was a few different attempts I took at it. One in Italy. And I don't know why I thought this was a reasonable idea, but I thought I was going to handwrite the book at first. And I did about 1 chapter of that and was like, absolutely not. And when I lived out in California, I tried again there, but just wasn't in the right headspace. And what happened was there was really 2 big things that happened. I did this event in Michigan that one of my friends within my network marketing company asked, she paid for me to fly out and come train and do all that for them. And I was like, you know what, at this event, I'm just going to tell my story, just raw, real, unscripted. And because I think that people are going to get a lot of inspiration, but learn a lot of lessons from that. So it was a smaller group, like maybe 100 people, but I just shared my story for about 20, 30 minutes. And afterwards, I'd never received a response like that from any of my trainings or speakings before. I had people coming up to me crying, telling me how much I impacted them, how much they resonated with it, how much they learned. And I'm thinking, like, I just told my story, right? And then I read the book, The Third Door by Alex Banayan. Yeah. Have you read that one?
Yeah.
One of my favorites. And I remember reading it and I literally only put the book down to go to the bathroom until I finished it. And I was thinking, I'm like, why was I so captivated by that book? And I realized it was because he told such an amazing story, but you learn so much from that story he told. And then that's when it clicked. I was like, that's what I have to do with this book. I've been overthinking it. I've been thinking I had to do like write all of these lessons and key things you don't learn in school and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, let's just start from the jump, getting expelled, not being able to afford college, all these different business ventures, living in Italy and being a club promoter there and working for this travel company. We were running around the streets, like flyering people for sales and commissions, to all the personal growth I went through and going on to be a top earner, and then pull the lessons out from those stories and leave some up for interpretation. So when I moved to New York City in the beginning of 2019, I was just like, let's just do the damn thing. Like I committed to a minimum of 2 hours a day of writing. Some days it would be 10 hours plus if I was really feeling it, but just made sure to move the needle forward every single day. And when I told my mom I was fully committed and she could tell in my eyes that I was, and I said to her, I was like, Mom, I'm going to write this book, but I just feel bad because you've had your book idea for so long and I don't want to publish mine before you publish yours. And that just lit the fire for her. She was like, absolutely not, you little shit. And so she committed, like every day we talk, just keep each other on track. We figured out the whole process as we went, and then we both published them in mid-March of 2020. We just hit the 1-year anniversary. But yeah, and I think in my mind the whole time, the goal of the book was to inspire people to take action on things that they don't even think are possible. Like their heart is telling them what to do, but they're not taking action on it because they don't think it's possible, because it's basically how we've been conditioned by society to believe. The second one was to shift their perspective to what's possible by showing them my story, everything I've been able to accomplish and from where I started. And the third was just to tell a really entertaining story that captivated people and that was hopefully similar to the effect that The Third Door had on me, where I picked up the book and could have put it down. And so far I've really been blown away and humbled by the feedback we've gotten.
Yeah. What's the name of your mom's book?
The Lemonade Diet.
The Lemonade Diet. What's it about?
Yeah. So basically the whole concept, when life hands you lemons. And for her, I mean, she's been through some crazy stuff, including getting into a road bike accident, breaking 7 ribs, collapsing a lung, dislocating her collarbone, then going on to run a marathon 3 months later. With her, it's tragic accidents after. Like she's had so many She had a cleaning business. She fell off a balcony, broke her hip, almost everything in her body, was alone in the home, had to crawl to a phone, call 911. And it was when she recovered from that she actually started running after and really just taking the shitty things we experiencing in life and finding the best possible outcome within them and the best lessons to take away to improve your life and not just dwell in the misery or play the victim from it.
Has your mom always been an entrepreneur?
I would say yes, because she never went to school. She did a lot of bartending and stuff like that, but she's owned a bakery, her cleaning business. She's been in direct sales / network marketing for probably close to 20 years now, which is very entrepreneurial business. Yeah. So yeah, I would say pretty early on she got involved.
You don't talk about your dad. Is your dad part of your life?
So my father, my mom and him divorced when I was about 2. And ever since, like, I've always seen him a few times a year, and it's not like we have a bad relationship. Like I don't feel any animosity or anything like that. Every time we see each other, it's all good, but I just don't really see him too often.
Does he live near you or out of
He lives in Connecticut. Yeah. Works all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. So you guys released your book at the same time?
Yeah, I actually published a day earlier just because of
is that a spite?
No, I didn't mean to. It was like specs and stuff like that. Her covered, it wasn't the right format or something like that. It was pretty funny.
Now let's dive into that. Let's dive into, and this is something I think we talked about before, and something I'm very passionate about is the school system and how it doesn't prepare our next generation to be ready to jump into the work field or as entrepreneurs, which I appreciate more obviously the entrepreneurial aspect. There's 3 things I always say, if these were taught in high school, it would prepare everybody so much more for the reality of the world. 1 is sales. 2nd is networking. The 3rd is public speaking. And I think public speaking is one of the biggest fears of most people, and they don't break that fear. They never break that fear. 2nd is networking. I think it's probably the most important tool, and it's something that's not taught, and it is actually is a tool. Learning how to network, learning how to utilize those networks, how to make those networks all bridge together. And then the last is sales. I think once you learn sales, the commonality, the rapport, how to build an actual understanding of how to communicate and sell and ask the right questions, once you get into the real world, if you have those 3 skills, doesn't matter what fields you get into, doesn't matter if you're anything you do, even if you're in sports, or you're going to kill it. Why is it taking so long? What's your mindset? Why is it taking so long for the educational system to actually open up and change?
It's funny if you look at the roots of it, because it really was designed to get people to go into a position where they're following orders, basically. Like 100%. It's creating people to be a cog in a bigger system. It discourages free thinking. It discourages creativity. Like for me, and I admitted fully that I was definitely kind of a jackass and prodded people and pushed the boundaries on things. But when someone is like standing out, like, like you see those pictures of like all of the people that are one color and then the red person on the side, like they're trying to whisk that person back in the crowd immediately. And I mean, it's going to just take reform. I think that people are going to have to kind of realize like what matters in life. Because I think for me, like in hindsight, I was just pursuing this physical therapy route because I thought that people would think highly of me, like my family, my friends, society would be like, wow, a doctor, you know what I mean? And I saw a 6-figure income. And to me at the time, that was millions and millions of dollars a year. And I think just reframing it to what matters in life, because people think the security that comes along with whatever the school system produces is everything. But in reality, it's just a huge, like, it's not even real. Like you look at what happened with COVID, people thought they had these secure jobs and that everything was stable and they had a paycheck every week. And just like that overnight, it's gone. So I think it's like people really realizing what values matter. And for me, when I said that light bulb went off, the real values were time freedom, being able to do what I wanted with my time, like go live in Italy for 7 months. When we met, I was in Colombia in the middle of the freaking jungle on a lake, just chilling for a month because I've created that time freedom, the financial freedom of how you earn your money. Like you don't need to be trading your time for money to earn money. And in fact, if you want to get wealthy, you can only trade your time for money to a certain extent. You need to figure out a way to build a business with systems and all that in place. But I don't know. It's really just a matter of enough people, I think with like any type of revolution, have to kind of be woke to the fact of what the school system's doing and how it's I mean, and there's opportunity there. I always say, like, if you're trying to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, and that's your true passion.
100%. Accountant. There's certain careers that educational does work and will set you in the right direction. Yeah, 100%. Quickly, with something you said there too, is passive income. And a lot of entrepreneurs, and I realized this, I think more than ever in 2020, where you hear somebody saying, I'm an entrepreneur, but they're a barber, or they're still trading time for money. Even though they're self-employed, they're still trading time for money. And they don't understand the importance of building passive income, building other revenues of income. So we got, top of my head, we got about 5 or 6 different revenues of income in this company here. So if one goes, COVID hits, I still have other incomes coming in. And a lot of people in 2020, the 12-month period, a lot of people were pushed against the wall, not realizing how to pivot at that point because they were not ready. They were never prepared, and they never had any form of passive income set aside that was going to allow them to have that moment or have that time, the freedom there. And what is your mind with passive income? And I think it's such an important thing, but what is your mind with passive income, and where's your mind with entrepreneurs that are still entrepreneurs, but they're still trading their time for money?
Yeah, it goes perfectly back. One of the first personal development books I read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. So that right off the bat, I realized, because I look like my stepfather, he has a stonemason business. He's self-employed. And for many years, he's never hired anyone because he doesn't like to work with other people. But you're shooting yourself in the foot, right? You have your own business, but you can only build so many stone walls and patios and walkways yourself. Like, yeah, you work for yourself, but you're very capped and limited. And in that book, he shows you have employed, self-employed, business owner, and investor. And the goal is to get over to that right side, like having a business. And what that really means is having a system in place. You've built something that with or without you, it'll stay the same income or ideally increase in income.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people, taking that leap is big, working for yourself. But it's like, how do you build a business around that now? Because you yourself just working for you isn't a true business or anything that's scalable. You need to figure out, like, how do you build the systems and put the things in place around it? And just to kind of like what I always share when I tell people what passive income is, I think the book example is amazing. Because take someone like J.K. Rowling, right? She was broke, homeless, had nothing. And then she had this idea for Harry Potter. And she starts writing and doing all the drafts and the whole writing process. That whole time, she's still dirt poor, making nothing. And what happens is, after you spend probably, I would say, thousands, if not 10,000 plus hours she spent on creating that book, it got to the point where now it's finished. It went through the editing. It's published. Now it's on the shelves. Now that book starts to make money. And now she's a billionaire off Harry Potter, right? And it will sell and be on the shelves selling for years and years to come, regardless, just because of that initial work she put in. And I think a lot of people aren't willing to take that sacrifice in the short term, like working 10, 16-hour days, whatever it may be, getting nothing, seeing nothing like tangible from the work they're putting in the terms of money, like no results coming in, and sticking that out for a year or two so that in the long run, they're getting paid a lot of money for things they're no longer doing anymore. And that's really the mentality, is I think switching to delayed gratification to get there. But first, just understanding, like, you're capped. If it's just you're capped. You need to build a business. You need to build systems. You need to build infrastructure around what you're doing to actually gain freedom from it.
Yeah, I love that. I always say 2 things. One is, when you start a business, you look at every single position in that business. And as soon as you're capable of firing yourself from certain positions, you start firing yourself from certain positions. And that allows you the freedom to grow the business, not work in the business. And then I always say too, when it comes to a company, you truly have a company when you could actually step out of the company for 30 days and the company is still growing or still maintaining itself without you physically there. That is when you know you have a business. And then that's kind of a little measuring tool I tell people is, if you could step out of your business for 30 days and go to Costa Rica or go somewhere and the business is still functioning, even if you're just overviewing and still functioning and still possibly growing, then you've created something that's an actual business.
Totally.
And so those are the 2 things that I always look at. Let's talk about, when it comes to business, let's talk about your little venture with the Hustler Prevails.
Yeah.
Let's go into that.
It's funny. So for me, network marketing, I always viewed it as a platform to create all these things we're talking about this whole episode, the financial freedom and the time freedom. And what I learned a lot during it was many, many skills that have served me tremendously in entrepreneurship and networking and sales, personal development, like everything you need to be equipped to be a successful entrepreneur. I feel like I've learned through the industry of network marketing. But for me, I always knew that I never wanted to be my end all be all. There's people who enter the industry and they're like, I'm going to dominate this industry my whole life. That's cool. There's people who enter it who want to make a couple $100 a week to pay their bills. That's cool too. For me, I was like, I want to get to a point where I've equipped myself to go and create my own businesses. So this year, when I put out the book, that was really the start of like this all coming together. And I think when you put things out there, like the opportunities attract in weird ways. And so for me, I put out the book in 2020. Last summer, I was laying in bed and I just had the phrase, "the hustle prevails," pop into my mind. I don't know why or whatever reason, but I was thinking about it for almost 10 minutes. And then I decided to pull out my computer and I'm like, this has got to be taken. And I look and the website's open, Instagram's open, and the trademark's open. So I just locked them all in on the spot with no idea what I was going to do with them. But I just liked the phrase. I liked how it sounded. And then I sat on it for a few months and really was able to think about like the meaning of that phrase and like what it actually meant and how much it represented my lifestyle and how much it could be a brand that I could get behind and support and build something with. So what I did, I was just like, let's make a hoodie. And I ordered a hoodie, like a hoodie base. I had my cousin print out "the hustle prevails" with a Cricut machine on the hoodie. It honestly didn't look great at all. She didn't do a great job, but printed it out. I put up an Instagram picture. I had 70 people hit me up to purchase the hoodie. So I get all of those made. And I mean, that alone, I was like, there's something here. There's people see what I saw when that phrase popped into my head. And again, like I said, I wanted to build my own businesses and I didn't really know exactly what it would be. Like the book was kind of a passion project. I know I wanted to teach people and help inspire people and equip them in entrepreneurship with everything that stemmed off the book, which has been brand masters and how we're teaching people how to build their brand online. But I also wanted to build like a business of my own that I could take and sell. And I realized that this could very well be it. And I made the decision to go all in with this as a clothing lifestyle apparel company. And it's been really cool, the results and feedback we've gotten so far. And it's just happened very organically. And it's really cool when something isn't forced, that you just kind of like feel like it happens organically, it happens naturally, and you just go all in on it.
I think that's when some of the greatest businesses develop, is when there isn't a pressure there, right? That mindset of you don't need it. Right? It's not your full-time income. There's not that pressure. So sometimes those are the most special because they might take a little longer to grow, but they are organically growing. So you're building a community. And I think when you're dealing with an apparel company, I think we talked about this before, it's so important to build a community around it and build it, brand ambassadors, building that network of people that believe and want to be part of it, want to show off and take pictures when they're wearing your apparel and stuff like that. So I think it's a huge thing that you're doing. And I love the name. We talked about this before. I love the name. I think it's something that's very catchy and it could do well in the right stream, in the right lane. So I congratulate you on that. With everything you're doing right now, you're so young still. Where do you see yourself in the next 2 or 3 years? I don't want to go further than that. From now to 30, where would you see yourself business-wise?
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I like that you said that too, because everyone's like, what's your 10-year vision? I'm like, you know how much has changed in the past 1 year?
I've from 19 years old on, I set 1-year goals. I've never set anything past. Like last year, from April, I had set goals financially. Like we have our office is all whiteboards everywhere. Like I'm in the studio, but I'm looking, it's like and I'm looking at our office. Our office is a loft setting and it's all whiteboards everywhere. And we always set our goals. We visualize here everything. We put everything on boards. And I always set 12-month goals. And when COVID hit, my goals altered, but I still had 5 solid goals from April till April, or March to March. One was write the book, become number 1 seller, do 100, start a new podcast, get 100, build my Man's Purpose program, get certified in a proper life and NLP program. So I had all these goals to set, and I crushed them all because I set them always in a 1-year plan. I never look at long term. Never look at long term. The only thing I do long term is with my son, because of this challenge he's been through. We set long term goals with him because we set short and long term. But myself is 1 year. So me even asking you 3 years is kind of contradicting what I do. But let's look at 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years. What would you likely see yourself being?
Yeah, I like how you mentioned you set your goals, things you can actually achieve too. It's not just some like obscure thing. It's like, I want to write the book and become a bestseller. It's like things that you know the process to actually do that and make it
100%,
happen
100%.
versus just arbitrary
Yeah.
things. And I think those just discourage people and they never end up really happening unless you have like a concrete thing that you're going to build and work towards.
100%.
So for me, I would say in the next 2 years, I want to take the Hustle Prevails to 7 figures in revenue. And with Brand Masters, we're honestly, it's funny. We're actually in the middle of constructing our goals right now, but with Brand Masters, we're essentially teaching people how to build out their personal brand through platforms like Instagram, podcasting, YouTube, writing a book, so that they can create more credibility and authority, so that they can grow their audience and network more, and obviously monetize, increase the income from their current business and create new streams of income. But for that, we have some pretty lofty goals. I know we want to impact at least 5,000 people in the next couple of years here, and just through helping them with their personal brand. So those are probably.
Do you realize? And I'm going to tell you this, and you're going to find this if you haven't found this out yet. When it comes to businesses that you're impacting others, you're going to realize, and I've realized this for 3 years because I've helped so many entrepreneurs, is 99% of the work you're putting out there, and the messages and the content and the amount of people you're going to impact, 99% of it will be free work. It'll be the 1% that you make money on, but it's the impact people. It's like you said, it's the long-term game, because it's so many people you're going to be filling with content, filling them with inspiration, filling them with hope, filling them with information, tools. You're never going to get anything back from that. And you have to have that mindset when you're serving, because the more you serve, eventually it'll come back. But it's just, you're constant giving. And you have to be ready for that. If you're not ready for that mentally, it could drain you. It could drain you so quickly.
Well, what's cool, Jeff, and I take that approach because I look at business as a long-term game. Yeah. And I basically you never know what's going to happen in the next few years, but I basically look at my mindset is like, I'm going to grind with business in at least till the age of 35 to like build all these foundations, so that at that age, I can basically work solely on what I'm passionate about. But what I've realized is exactly what you just said. So I've done so many free training calls for network marketing teams within my company and other companies, like showed up and done free trainings in person, never expecting anything in return. But it does come full circle in the long run, because you publish something like a book, people remember the impact you've made and they want to show support in some way. And just like the flooding in of how many people purchased the book and have done things like that. And even with Brand Masters, we started off just with our free Facebook group, just posting what we know about personal branding, like everything about social media. And we released a $7 course, just an Instagram course, just to basically show people like, this is what we know, like we know what we're doing, and to prove ourselves. But so many people bought that just because they wanted to show reciprocal love back to us. But we never went into it with the mentality like monetize immediately. Like, we know that you have to build a community and give back. And then in the long run, you got to play the long-term game. No one's playing that right now, I feel like.
Oh, at all. Something you said at the beginning, and we're going on to an hour now, but there's a few questions I want to ask you, which I try not to usually have set questions, but at the end we have usually 1 or 2 questions I want to ask you. But something we had talked about on a personal level, and it's something that you had mentioned at the beginning, and in one of your conversations starting this podcast, about people being authentic, people being real, and that's one thing we have talked about Clubhouse. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that for a couple of seconds, about Clubhouse and because that's something you said you're doing a group this week and all that about podcasting. When it comes to social media nowadays, it's hard. Do you not find it's so flooded? It's so packed with bullshit.
Totally, man. Totally. And it sucks because I know entrepreneurs who are actually making a ton of money, who've built their foundations off the bullshit. Like, they encourage, like, perception is reality. Go buy 100,000 followers, buy a blue check, flood all this stuff. And then it comes because you look as like someone that's perceived to be successful. And it just sucks because I've been at this consistently for 9 years now. And I feel like I do have results to show. But it's very frustrating when you see people just go for the immediate, shortcuts and immediate results and just not doing it the right way. I don't know.
I love you saying that, because that was one thing where I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years, and I could have been paid the coach 3 years ago. People were offering money. And I said to myself, I'm not going to take money. And I took on 64 entrepreneurs under my wing. I think we talked about this. And I coached for free for 3 years. And it was just for me to prove a proof of concept and to build testimonials and build awareness of that. And then until I was ready to start coaching. To be honest, I was going to do it for another 2 years. If COVID didn't hit, I was going to do that till I was 45 and only start coaching at 45. And then COVID kind of opened up the doors and allowed me to go write a book and do all the stuff to kind of add to the branding aspect of it. But I find there's a lot of people that have never really experienced or done nothing, or they just put themselves in a situation, like you said, they create this image and they're making money on this image that's not true. And then I get a lot of entrepreneurs. Like I had a gentleman reach out to me a couple of weeks ago, and I've been working with him for a couple of weeks coaching. And he's been part of all these think tanks, and he's wasting 10,000 here, 20,000 here on these programs. And within 3 to 4 weeks, I've probably got him faster than and more ahead than this 1 year of all this. Probably spent about 27,000. And in a matter of 4 weeks, I got him to pretty much where he wanted to get to in a couple of weeks by just like figuring out a solution and finding it. And that's one thing about me is I even though I'm certified as a life coach and NLP and all this, to me, it's all about results. It's all about results. You come to me and say, Jeff, I want A, B, and C to happen. I figured a way to make it happen. That's all it is. That's all it is. I want a better podcast. Let's get you a better podcast. I want to get on stage on a TEDx stage. Okay, I'll find a way to get you on stage. It's usually utilizing your networking and just figuring out a way to make it happen. And I think a lot of these guys are full of a lot of crap where they just fill you with all this bullshit, and it just keeps going. And these programs they're not cheap. Some of these coaching programs are $5,000-$10,000 a month. And what are people truly getting out of it, right? So I appreciate that you're young and you understand that. And I appreciate how you understand the importance of doing it for yourself first and proving a proof of concept before you go out and try to sell something. So, and like I said, you're young, but 9 years, it is a good amount of time you've been doing something. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. You know, what's funny, like thinking in hindsight, in my first network marketing business, I used social media zero. Like we were encouraged to not use social media. All the businesses we were building in college were no social media. Like our book one, we were printing thousands of these orange flyers and running around campus, putting them under doors with our website to make appointments and a number they could text to get a quote for their book. Like we'd spend 2 nights running around campus flyering like guerrilla warfare tactics. You know what I mean?
But that is still a great tactic. A lot of people forget about that.
No, totally. But that's the thing is that I built, and I was pretty much a top 10 earner for 2,500 before I really focused on building social media for business. Yeah. You know what I mean? So having that experience and having like started off my roots without social media, and then like it's a gift and the curse of social media is that anyone can make money there, but the curse is that anyone can make money there now. And people are, losing their jobs, seeing how unstable things are during COVID. And they're like, all right, we got to go to social media to make money now. And they're so susceptible of just falling into the shortcuts and the tricks and paying thousands and thousands of dollars to people that look like they may have results, but they have no idea what they're actually backed by. So it's one of those things, man, like with anything else, when something great comes along, there's going to be downsides that come with it as well. And there's no barriers to entry for social media for someone to become a professional or expert in some niche and start posting about it and creating a course. Like there's really no barriers to entry to that. Yeah. So you just got to be smart yourself. It's like, you can tell by looking, like I can tell immediately when I look at someone's profile if they're full of shit or not, basically. Like you can tell if their followers are bought, their likes are bought, their comments. You can tell if they know what they're talking about if you listen to them. And that's a gift and curse of Clubhouse, is that you can tell. You know what I mean? Like people start talking and you're automatically like, all right, like this person has no idea what they're saying. Yeah. And you can investigate too. A lot of times you see the people on there have like 30, 40,000 followers. You go back to their Instagram and just no one engages with them. But basically they saw this Clubhouse trend starting, are camped on there 12, 14 hours a day, and are just getting followers from people who can't identify the difference. Yeah. And it's just, you just got to be smart, really, is what it comes down to.
I love that. One last question. If something were to happen to you today, in a few words, how would you want to be remembered or described by your loved ones? And I know you're young. Sometimes it's hard to think about that, but how would you want to be remembered or described by your loved ones?
Just as someone who did it different and went against the grain, honestly, because I feel like everything I've done has just been very unconventional. The lifestyle I've lived, the lifestyle I've pursued. And I just like being known as the person that doesn't conform, like that always stays true to who they are and goes after the things that they say they're going to do. And when I say I'm going to do something, I always end up doing it. And really, like, that light is what's most important to me to be held in, just being an individual.
Love it. I love it. Any last things you want to say to our audience?
Oh man, I think it was a great episode. I'm happy I got the opportunity to come on. I love the episode we did together, and I love everything you're doing, man. I'm very honored and grateful that we're able to connect.
I appreciate you, man. I mean, I see a lot of similarities in myself in you, so I appreciate that. I love working with young entrepreneurs. So I see a lot of your hustle, your drive, I was that kid in high school. I was that kid that, like, my nickname in high school was the loner, because I would be the type of guy where, like, I would be in a group of people and I would just be like, I got to get out of here. And I would just walk out, or I'd walk out of a classroom. I'd be literally grab my bag in the middle of the classroom, just walk out of the classroom, because I was just like, I wasn't enjoying myself. And I never, and the same thing, I did college. And the reason I did fitness is because my parents kind of wanted me to do college, even though I was already running a business at 19. And it was understanding where I was just doing it to make my parents happy. And I was learning fitness, and I did enjoy the industry for a bit, but it was a situation where I always knew I was never going to work for nobody. I always knew I was never going to work for nobody. So I appreciate your hustle. I appreciate everything you're doing, brother. So I'm going to put on all our show notes, how to get a hold of John, how to pick up his book, how to, one thing we didn't even talk about is your podcast. Let's quickly give a little shout out to your podcast. Tell everybody about your podcast quickly. Yeah,
100%. Well, I think podcast is probably the best place to check me out. That's where I'm putting the most value out and most consistent content, but it's called The Unconventional Education Show. It's an extension of my book, and we talk all topics of mindset, of entrepreneurship, and just life to help people level up, become the best version of themselves. So I bring on awesome guests like Jeff. I do an individual episode every Monday where I'll break down some lesson in the field of entrepreneurship. We're heavy on marketing and branding and sales. And then the guests that I bring on are just always people who are crushing it in life in an unconventional way. A lot of them are entrepreneurs. We have reality TV people, doctors, like just awesome people who are doing things differently. So yeah, definitely check that out.
Love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, brother. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff.
That's a wrap for today. I want to thank our guest, John, for being such an incredible guest today. If you guys enjoy this podcast as much as I did, please spread the word. Tell your friends, tell your family. Leave a review. 5 stars would be absolutely amazing. We love spending time reading the reviews. If you guys have any questions, reach out to us on social media. We always answer all our DMs. Until next week, guys, keep moving forward.